Welcome to the C Word, the Conservators podcast. Today we're talking career changes. I'm Jenny Mathiasson, an Objects Conservator based in Carmarthenshire.
And I'm Kloe Rumsey, an Objects Conservator based in Greater Manchester.
Now, welcome guys.
Welcome. Hello.
I think in a surprise turn of events, this isn't the episode that I announced at the end of the last episode. It happens.
It's not very many times, actually, in the history.
I'm sort of impressed, really. But yes, don't worry. That episode is still coming up. It's just not going to be in the right order. It's fine. These things happen. But we figured today we're going to tackle something that's been sort of in our spreadsheet for a little while. And it's just sort of career changes. Not changing from conservation, changing to conservation and what people have done in a previous life, which I think is
a good origin story.
Yes. Anyway, to do that, then we have a special guest host with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. My name is Erin Foster, and I am a second-year master's student at Cardiff University.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hello.
I love hearing about what people have done previously in their lives, like before they came to conservation, if conservation isn't their first love, if you see what I mean.
I'm actually surprised when I hear that people have come to conservation first, actually. I always expect people to have sort of, I don't know, done something else first and then gone, oh, it's not really for me, or I heard about this and my heart was set on it, that kind of thing. So when people are like, oh no, hi, I'm, this is my first, I'm always very surprised. I think, how did you find out about this?
I'm always like, oh, wow, you must have done your research or something.
Exactly.
Someone talked to you at the right point in time. Good for you.
What careers advice did you get and when? And how can we repeat this?
And then I'm super chuffed and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad something's working somewhere. But yes, we may not have the most usual careers. So it's fair enough that people don't necessarily know about conservation. Why do we think that is? Like, is it just that we don't appear enough, do you think?
Are we too behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, we are very good at keeping quiet about our entire existence.
I think it's that we're both behind the scenes and sort of exclusive. Because it's that question, isn't it, that we were talking about last episode of if you're anything that works in a museum, you're a curator to the public eye. And
yeah, I suppose that doesn't really help.
There's sort of a low understanding of what conservation is, and if you do hear of it, it's like, oh, that's a white coat job, probably couldn't do it, oh gosh, or oh, it looks a bit serious or whatever.
That's true. That's where, like, most people I encounter who aren't heritage professionals have no idea what a conservator is. Heck, half of the ones that are at our museum or heritage professionals don't know what a conservator is. So I feel like that it's definitely some sort of branding issue there. Like we're not promoted enough. People don't really know what we do. So it's fair enough that people aren't really finding out about this career option for like a while. I'm also super curious to sort of know how people did find conservation if it wasn't their first career, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
What were the circumstances that you discovered that this was the thing? Because for me, I mean, arguably it is my first career, but it's because someone almost accidentally found me, just sort of swanned in one day in a lab coat, like just very dramatic and just like, hello, have you considered being a conservator? And I was like,
oh my God.
No, what's that?
You are the origin story where a mysterious person in a coat and a hat turns up and goes, hello, I've been watching you for a while and you've got magic powers.
I think it was substantially less stalking than that, and there was no hat. But close.
You're a conservator, Jenny.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I suppose I did have that. But then I sort of chickened out and I studied something else initially at university and stuff. And then I was sort of brave enough to do the conservation degree.
I sort of worked backwards.
Ooh.
I did something else for 10 years. And when I lost my job due to the pandemic, I sort of looked at what I thought would be a cool job. And then I said, what kind of degree do those people have? And I kept seeing conservation, preventative conservation, all this stuff listed in these job descriptions. And I thought, what the heck is that? And so then I started looking it up online and I thought, oh, that sounds like a really cool job. And so that's kind of how I switched into conservation, because I have no background in it whatsoever.
Oh, fabulous. I love it.
Yeah.
What did you do for 10 years, out of curiosity?
I was an audiologist.
Oh, cool.
Silly question, but what does that mean?
So I was a doctor of audiology, which we basically do hearing and balance testing and sell hearing aids.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass, actually. I like that.
Yeah, it was definitely a good job, but I feel like this fits me a lot better.
That's amazing. How are you finding conservation? Like, how are you finding the transition from medical profession to conservation?
Quite difficult at times, but I think the material is so interesting, and it kind of combines all of the things that I like. So it keeps the science aspect, which I liked about my previous job, and sort of methodical approach to problems. But then you get more creativity, a lot more creativity, and you also get historical information. So kind of combines all three of those things together, which I really like.
I suppose I considered other careers, like at the point where I met the conservator, right? The conservator, as if it's an archetype. Anyway, when I met her, I was sort of thinking of either doing archaeology, but then everyone told me that was a bad idea, so I was like, fine. Rubbish advice, by the way. Everyone needs archaeologists. But instead, I was thinking of going into physics, like either theoretical physics.
Oh, wow.
Or astronomy specifically. So like those were sort of my sort of options, because I was really into physics. So I sort of get what you mean about the sort of like scientific approach and that sort of thing. Like I guess conservation sort of marries the two worlds that I sort of wanted to get into, which is sort of science, but also history and archaeology and stuff. And it just sort of, it's a beautiful Venn diagram. I really like that I found it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, at least myself, I had never even heard of conservation before until a year and a half ago. So I think we need to be hitting the streets maybe with some signs or something to tell people about it, because even when people are asking me what degree I'm doing, a lot of people will say, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
And they don't really know. And then I kind of explain it, and they say, oh, that sounds really cool. Or when I share pictures of things I'm doing on social media, all my friends back at home say, oh, wow, that looks so awesome. And, oh, you get to clean these museum objects. That's so neat. And I just think, spreading the word about conservation is a good thing, because at least for me, I didn't know it was even an option.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. And that's the thing. It is a really cool job. But you need to know it exists to be able to think that you should do that, So it's definitely a marketing issue in there somewhere. Kloe, do you want to tell us about your origin story?
So I started doing, I did an archaeology A-level. So I don't know if A-level means anything to our non-UK audience.
I mean, it barely does to me.
Oh. All right. I was between the ages of 16 and 18 doing school that wasn't compulsory. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Medium level further education. So I was doing an archaeology A-level, and I think in the first week or something of it, they were talking about where did it as a degree. And someone said, oh, and Cardiff's got archaeology as well. It's really good. They're better known for their conservation courses, which are really, really famous. And I remembered this, but didn't really I remember thinking, oh, science. Oh, that's interesting, but scary. I'm an archaeologist sort of thing. And then I tried to be an academic archaeologist, and I find reading and writing very difficult, and dyslexic person who is interested in the kind of archaeology that other people aren't. And I remember looking at jobs thinking, what if I don't want to do academic archaeology? I'll do practical archaeology. And at the time, laughably, there were no jobs in archaeology, but loads of jobs in conservation.
Oh, what a different time.
And I know. And at the same time, my boyfriend was living in South Wales. And I remember it kind of all like clicking together like a puzzle that had been whirring away for a while. Like...
The universe is trying to tell you something.
And then I, basically the next day called up Jane and said, hello, can I do conservation, please? And she said, probably. Come and meet us first. because I was still in university, it is my first career, but I was full on thinking I was going to do something else. But I already knew about it. I just didn't think it was a great option, but I didn't think it was my great option.
Yeah.
Until it became really obvious that it was, and I should have done it from the start.
Good origin story. I like it. But yeah, so I basically just asked people on social media, our listeners and things, if conservation wasn't their first career, what had they done before in a previous life? And we got some great answers. They've been really fun to read through, actually. So I thought I would read some of them out now. Hannah says it's her first proper career, but that she trained and worked as a costume maker.
Oh, that's cool.
But then moved into conservation. But she did spend several summers making costumes for the Lion King. And I'm like, it doesn't...
cool.
It sort of doesn't matter what you say. That's cool.
You have me at Lion King.
Diana said that she spent 10 years as an archaeologist. And here, I feel like archaeology is a real theme.
It really is.
I feel like a lot of people have that as their sort of origin story. Like, I feel like there must be some sort of conversion rate for archaeologists becoming conservators. I really do.
Oh, definitely. I reckon it's because of finding out about it. It's easier if you're coming from somewhere that is strongly associated with conservation.
Like now I'm having flashbacks to the Iceman sort of documentaries when I was a kid.
Yes.
And obviously the Vasa in Sweden as well. And obviously really conservation heavy endeavors, right? Although I didn't really hear the word conservator, but more like it's been preserved, which is a mammoth task and stuff like that. So it's sort of interesting.
Yeah. So I went to see Otzi when he was in Bolzano in the Mummy Museum, and there was loads about the preservation. And I think maybe because it wasn't in English, I didn't see the word conservation, and so that didn't push the mechanism of the whatever it was I said on.
Yeah. With Otzi in particular, I feel like there were so many documentaries, and I was so obsessed with them. I just remember them talking a lot about what scientists were doing. So I think it was like very much sort of scientists are doing this. People in lab coats.
Yeah, the scans of this and the x-rays of that. Yeah, definitely.
And then ultimately everyone was just someone in a lab coat for a little bit. Some of which may have been a conservator, it's hard to say. But I feel like thinking back, it was very sort of science heavy, if you see what I mean.
I think we need like our own Indiana Jones to kind of make conservation really cool,
Yeah, definitely. Is this are you offering?
No.
You sure? That could be great.
I mean, I maybe would if I got a whip and a hat.
What would you be doing with the whip?
So what kind of hat?
You could have like a piece of cotton tape instead of a whip.
You don't get much of a snap out of that, I have to say.
No, true. You could fashion one out of Tyvek.
What if I just like had my tools, my conservation tools on a belt?
That's quite good.
Or in a lab coat. Anyway, sorry, Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's how we started. But I just feel like loads of the people that you and I went to university with back in our day, Kloe, that a lot of people had come from archaeology. I just feel like there were a lot of former archaeologists. I was going to say reformed archaeologists. That makes it sound like
rehabbed archaeologists.
They've come in from the cold and they're a bit warmer now.
They've washed their hands.
I'm so sorry, archaeologists. But I just felt like there were a lot of people who came from an archaeology background, and I think that's super interesting. But yes, as you say, maybe it's just that the lingo is bandied about a bit, and they I guess have contact with conservators or conservation in some way that a lot of other people don't.
Yeah.
Vera said that they started as a ceramics artist and designer. It's really fun when people start as sort of makers of things and then want to look after the thing later. Not necessarily their own thing, but more because Vera said that they really wanted to work in ceramics conservation specifically. And that sort of makes sense as a sort of transition to me.
We've said that before, haven't we, about the huge value of craft in conservation.
Well, yeah.
Was it Jonathan Ashley Smith?
It was.
Back in one of the earlier episodes.
It very much was.
Yeah.
We will link to it.
If you think you don't want to do any writing and you want to progress with conservation, just go and do some stitching or something, or make a pot out of self-dry clay, something like that. Just, you can't go wrong, can you, with hand skills? There's no wasted time.
That's true. There is a certain amount of writing involved in conservation because you do have to document things.
Yes. Make stuff, people.
And also, as we've already mentioned, like creativity can be a really great asset in conservation. So that's, I think it's just sort of a natural fit, really. So it was sort of fun to see people saying that.
And the transferable skills from there, I suppose, is an insight into like communication with artists and like the goals of an artist and the feelings and perceptions of what the purpose of the art might be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I suppose I hadn't really considered that angle. I guess I immediately went to sort of the material science sort of side where you sort of know how clay behaves and how it will have been fired and then what's involved with making a glaze and stuff like that. You would have sort of a knowledge of the materials and the processes involved, even if the modern processes as opposed to ones from thousands of years ago, but that he would still have sort of understanding of the material that might be a bit more thorough than mine. Having not really made a lot of pottery, for example. Louisa first worked as an accounts and admin clerk for several companies and then a commissioned officer in the RAF, so that's the Royal Air Force. That is super cool.
That's really cool.
What a transition.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that those are two very different careers, and it's similar to where you came from, Erin, with the like not really arts.
No.
Yeah. It's sort of a completely different thing. It's super cool. Mandy was a pensions administrator and then a web developer. Again, we've had quite a few people say they sort of came from IT backgrounds, which just makes sense because there are a lot of them. In today's society, there are a lot of IT people just in general. Lucy said that she was an assistant school librarian. And again, I've noticed a pattern of librarians coming through.
Ah, that's a good one. Do they tend towards paper conservation?
That is a good question. Actually, looking at the three who said librarian, only one of them is a book and paper conservator.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, my supervisor at my placement this summer, she was a rare books librarian and then ended up taking book and paper conservation courses.
Cool.
So there's definitely like a pattern of librarians as well. Yeah, not always going into book and paper, which is sort of fascinating. M says that she was an illustrator, specifically of children's books, which is adorable and I love. They are not an art conservator, they say. So I like that they've preempted my next question, which is going to be, I wonder if you're some sort of art conservator. No, did not say what kind of conservator they were, just not an art conservator. I really wanted to be something industrial now. Is that bad? I just wanted to be like, I look after ships. Leanne used to be a designer in the fashion industry and worked for places like Marks and Spencer's and all sorts of things.
And Leanne is a textiles conservator, isn't she? So that's a good link.
Yes, definitely. I like that. And someone else said that they used to be a knitwear designer and is now a textile conservator.
Oh, love it.
Abigail said that she'd... as a teacher, seen some amazing previous careers amongst her students. So that's things like her favorite is cemetery tour guide.
Wow.
Which is very specific and I love it. I'm here for it. Other examples include graphic designer, publisher, illustrator, editors, and she includes mothers, which I thought was nice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People finding a career after having had children. And that's super cool. Again, I wonder how that happens. Like, have you met another conservator who is a mother, or have you... I'm super curious how people who may have had a completely different career and then also had children, how they will have come across conservation. Super curious. Good for you. Welcome. Someone else said editors, like someone else who does a lot of courses and training, said that they find that loads of their students are editors. And I'm like, how? Like, is it something in the publishing industry that just makes people want to do something with their hands? I'm confused. What is this pattern? If there are more teachers out there who know about this, I want answers.
There does seem to be two sides of this, doesn't there? And maybe, Erin, you'll let us know if this fits with how you felt, that either there's people coming from a similar area, so art or libraries or something like that, so they're doing something and then they see something and think, oh yeah, that sounds like a really good step towards something that's more them. And then there's the drastic change from something very like computery or sciencey or admin-y, it seems like a more sort of, I suppose, a drastic switch.
I mean, I think mine was kind of a career 180, if you will. I just think that for me, it was more of when I lost my job, I thought, do I want to look for a new job in this career or do I want to try something else? And I did think for a while before that I didn't really love what I was doing. And, you know, when you're working with patients every day, you really should.
Yeah.
You know, have a lot of passion for it. It's a tough job to be talking to people about hearing loss and all the issues that go along with it if you're not really devoted to that career. And yeah, like I said before, I just think I have a lot of interests, but I just never, none of those interests ever seemed like it could be a job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was one of those kids in school where they would do those little career things and it would be like a little aptitude test. Oh, what kind of job should you go into? Oh, you're at art or business or whatever. And mine was always like in the center.
No.
Kind of like likes too many things. can't compute. But I mean, it does combine a lot of craft, you know, working with your hands and kind of a touch of art, you know, if you're doing ceramics, retouching or something like that. But yeah, I still don't really know how I decided to just say, all right, I'm moving to a different country and starting a new job in the middle of a pandemic. That sounds like a good idea.
Well, there's already a level of chaos in a pandemic, isn't there? So how bad can it really be?
Yeah.
And also, it's important to find your passion in life. I'm glad you found something that you like. That's really good.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're never too old to switch.
No, definitely not.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think a lot of people feel, and I thought that a lot of times too, you know, oh, you know, I've already gone to undergraduate and I have a doctorate in something else and I've worked for 10 years in that field. And is that all, quote unquote, a waste because I'm switching? And I don't think that that's true.
No, I don't think so at all. And I guess the important thing is that, you know, you should do something that you like and care about, and whether that's conservation or something else, you know, you should find your thing. And it doesn't really matter when you find it. Like, it doesn't matter if you're 17 or you're 70. It doesn't matter.
No. And it is something that's scary to start all over again.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but it's worth it in the end if it's what you really want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like the pandemic has been like a time when a lot of people have like reevaluated what they want to do.
Yeah.
With their lives. And I've seen a lot of like amazing changes that people have made where people are just going, you know what, I'm dropping this. This is rubbish. I don't like it. And I spent 20 years doing it, but I don't care. I'm just going to go and do something else now. And it's like, good for you.
I think it's put a lot of things into perspective for a lot of people.
I'm super curious because, Erin, you mentioned sort of career aptitude tests or like sort of career guidance of some description at school.
Yeah, it was just some like, if I can remember correctly, it was some sort of, not a quiz.
Yeah.
But it was sort of a multiple choice questionnaire about what you're interested in to try to guide you. I mean, we don't have A-levels and all that kind of stuff. You can kind of pick, oh, I want to do like more art classes, or, oh, I want to do this and that. But you pretty much just have, everybody takes the same things. You know, you take a language, you take math, you take science. And so it's kind of something that was supposed to help you.
Yeah. Kloe, did you ever get anything like that? Is that something that you get in the UK system at all? Or?
It is, yeah. I remember doing a computer-based quiz, but I'm struggling to remember what it was that mine came up with. I remember it being just a total anticlimax, like, oh, that's crap. Like, and thinking genuinely that the thing was pointless because it was so sort of either vague or wrong. And I remember having careers advice at university as well, and I can't remember when it was. Actually, I think it was a meeting that we were told to have with a careers advisor, and I remember just thinking, well, this doesn't mean anything to me and it's not tailored either. So I don't know that anything had moved on particularly well, and I don't know that they necessarily would have known about conservation either.
Yeah.
As an option.
It's funny to me because I know that there was like a career guidance counselor or something like in school. Like they had an office, but like I never met them, and I never recall them coming to class or anything. Like, I just feel like, what was their purpose? To sit there in your office and not interact with the kids. I don't know. I just don't remember ever meeting them or seeing them or hearing anything about them really. So it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think that 20-minute quiz that I took necessarily helped me figure anything out, because I still went to university undecided.
Yeah.
I didn't have any sort of major picked.
There's a number of different issues around this, I think, aren't there? When is it that people find out about it, and how do people find out about it? So if for the purposes of diversity, we want to get people early, I guess, people in schools knowing about it. So there's the potential of getting into conservation degrees with the like student loan system and stuff like that. Then we'd need it to be more visible on school visits and stuff to museums. And then I was thinking about this at the beginning of the episode when we were talking about like what our perceptions of conservation first. So like the lab coats and the behind the scenes and all of that. And that's the kind of barrier to entry of conservation, even if you decide that you like the idea of it. So I wondered if we could talk about the other ways that we felt or potentially could imagine other people feeling sort of blocked out of it, and then how to get into it. Like, how did people make the switch? Because there's making the decision, and then there's, okay, so what does this mean? Do you leave your job? Do you apply for funding? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, those are good questions. And something related to that is that, so basically we stay at school a little bit longer in Sweden, like another year compared to most people. So the optional bit of school is 3 years. So you finish when you're 19, not 18. So that means that the earliest you can go to uni is when you're 19.
Yeah.
And because that meant that I missed the application window through UCAS, that meant that I had to take a gap year. So I was 20 when I went to uni. And in my first degree, that really made me feel quite alien, other than the fact that I was a foreigner, because actually everyone else around me was 18. And surprisingly, 2 years makes a huge difference at that point.
It does then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's surprising. And I felt really old, and like it was just super uncomfortable. But then by the time I went to Cardiff and did my master's, people were such different ages. They were from different countries. They were different stages of their lives. Some had families. Some had previous careers. There were all sorts. And it was so freeing. I just really liked that about it. And I guess that's something that I want to tell people, is that actually people do fight it at all times, and don't feel like you will be the odd one out, because you won't necessarily be. It depends. I bet that depends on the program, etc. But
How did you find it, Erin, when you did it?
Well, what made me choose Cardiff is that it was a conversion course.
Yes.
And so you didn't have to have a super strong background in science or art or history or anything like that. And so I think that really helped a lot ease my fears. And I think a lot of my classmates, I have, a classmate that he used to be a data analysis and worked on a chicken farm. But, we have somebody who studied history, somebody who was fine art major. And so it's really just like a wide variety of people. And like you said before, Jenny, there was like lots of ages. I'm the oldest one. Somebody is right out of uni. A lot of people have done other things for a couple of years, so they're kind of in their mid-20s. And then there's a couple of us that are late 30s for me, and then, early to mid-30s for some other people. And so I just think it's just it being the conversion course really helped me to know that, okay, they don't expect me to have this high level of knowledge already going in. And that made me feel a lot more comfortable that everybody was kind of on the same playing field sort of thing.
Oh, it's such a big deal to not be scared of the science. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people are really freaked out. I think that's a lot of the lab coat stuff as well, where it's like, people need to have a chemistry degree for this. No, you don't. There is chemistry involved, but I would say that might be an off-putting thing for quite a lot of people.
Do you know how your classmates are working it practically? So have they gone for like later career funding, or are they working through, obviously no need for specifics because it's a personal question, but it's interesting to know the different options.
I'm doing loans through the US government. I know that some people are funding it themselves. They've saved, and I know that there are certain grants available. I'm not 100% sure what everybody is doing. I know that one of my classmates is American, and he's doing it through the GI Bill.
What is that?
Once you've been in the US military, then you get funding to go to university once you're out of the military.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and another classmate works in Singapore as a conservator, and her work is paying for her to come to the course. So I think there's a lot of different people doing a lot of different things.
Oh, amazing. Just goes to show that there are a lot of different ways of going about it.
Yeah, and that it's not always necessarily kind of financially impossible.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a saving element, but also grants and stuff are available if you sort of seek them out. It's just putting in that kind of I suppose, well, I'm going to say it, the positivity to think, yeah, I can do it. I just have to try, kind of thing. I know that glosses over a lot of the struggles, but I know personally that there were, grants and scholarships and stuff that I didn't go for in either archaeology or in conservation, because I thought, well, why would anyone give me the money to do it? I'm just gonna save up myself because I'm not going to get any funding.
No, that's a rubbish attitude.
That's not necessarily the case. I know. I think it's because I think I tried to get some funding in archaeology once, and I wasn't given it because, like, I don't know, nobody wanted to do Paleolithic religion. And at the same time, my sister was doing physics and she was getting all the funding everywhere. And I was like, oh, fine then.
But you also miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I know.
So yeah. And of course we're trying to get apprenticeships off the ground as well.
Maybe this is an invite now for Icon to tell us where we are with that, because we were talking about I realise there's a pandemic that's been in the way a bit, but we were talking about that apprenticeships were on the way in 2009. Was it 2019? When did we go down to London? When did we do the...
That was 2018.
Man, was it? Okay, well, in that case, like 3 years ago, and it'd be really good to get them going and at least open the conversation more about what the kind of employer attitudes would be and how it would work. So
tell you what, I will check.
Yeah, let's do that as a follow-up.
And here's Jenny from the future with a follow-up. In fact, we get hold of Patrick from Icon, and he is giving us a bit of an update. Here you go.
So where are we with apprenticeships? First off, what's the state of play? Well, for conservation, both standards are fully registered and approved, and they now have an endpoint assessment organisation in place, which means that learners can actually start on the standards now. Thinking about this, it's important just to remember that there are 4 groups involved in each apprenticeship. So, of course, there's the apprentice, there's the employer who hosts and importantly pays and teaches them on the job. There's a training provider, so a college or university to provide the on-programme formal training. And finally, an endpoint assessment organisation, so who, through assessment, certifies whether the apprentice has met the required standard of the apprenticeship. But endpoint assessment in particular, so what does this mean? So the shake-up of the apprenticeship model back in 2012 introduced the idea of endpoint assessment for apprenticeships. And similar to trade exams of the past, this is an independent assessment at the end of an apprenticeship by an organisation who hasn't directly trained or employed the apprentice to independently verify that the apprentice has met the required level of practice across the different knowledge, skills and behaviours that are defined by the apprenticeship standard. So in this role, ICON is registered with the government as the endpoint assessment organisation for both of the conservation standards. And so similar to delivering ICON accreditation, we will arrange an assessment by accredited conservators at the end of an apprentice to effectively sign them off as having met the required standard. For both the level 4 and level 7 conservation standards, this is going to be done through a written project and then a professional discussion supported by a portfolio of evidence. The final thing for the update is who is offering the apprenticeships. So there are currently 2 training providers registered. So the level 7 is being offered by the University of Lincoln and the level 4 is being offered by West London College, although there are currently more providers looking to get set up and registered for these standards. To get involved as an employer, the best thing to do is to get in touch with one of those training providers directly, who they'll be able to talk you through the process. And if you're a potential apprentice, well, you could get in touch directly with the training providers. However, do remember that vacancies are also going to be advertised on the .gov website as well as on the sites of individual employers.
Well, there you go. That's the official update. You're welcome. Let's get back to the episode. But yes, I think there are quite a few things that can be intimidating about going into conservation. And I think maybe... I'm sort of hoping that we help make things less scary by talking about what we do and sharing that with people. You know, anyone can listen to this. I'm just sort of hoping that we're doing our bit of making this sound less scary, because...
if we all talk about it, if we all kind of try and engage with different audiences and stuff, then that's just going to be a huge improvement. The big, public-facing conservation campaigns like... Restoration of the Night Watch. It's in a big sort of tank, and people, the members of the public can watch conservation going on. It's amazing.
Oh, I love seeing conservation in action.
I love it so much. There's a window into my studio that I've talked a lot about because I love it so much, and it makes me feel very proud and I'm going to say proactive, even though I do very little to actually, I didn't put the window there. When there are kids at the window in my museum and they're looking at me and they're like craning their necks to see what I'm doing, and they wave and they're looking at the sort of activities in front of them. Yeah. That makes me think, yes, you will remember this is the kind of thing that people don't get and they don't know about conservation. So yeah, we need more stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Like it's really fun to be like cleaning something in front of people.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Even going around and just doing the light monitoring in a gallery and having people ask you what you're doing. That's super fun. It's all about those conversations, right? That all helps.
I think it's somewhat of an invisible middleman. A lot of people know about archaeologists and what they do, and a lot of people think, oh, people who work in the museum, they're the curators, and they know a lot about art. But I don't, like we talked about earlier, I don't think the word conservation really gets thrown around, at least from when I was growing up.
Another thing I was going to say is that, right, so maybe we should go to career fairs. Maybe we should make people aware that we exist, and not just in terms of we should be on more TV shows or in more news articles. That's fine. But more what else can we be doing? Something I really enjoyed at my last place of work is that the education officer there basically designed a school session that was about the different jobs in the museum.
Adorable.
It's really fun.
That's cool.
It featured conservation and it featured all the other jobs in a museum. Jen says that she ran her own illustrations and graphic design business, and before that did animal care. Those, again, seem very different to me, which is sort of fascinating. Megan went from webmaster and working in IT to knowledge management to conservation. That sounds like an intriguing sort of meandering path. I love it. Hillary used to edit financial research for big banks and financial firms.
Crikey.
I do not know what that means, but it sounds exhausting.
It does. It sounds very important and high impact.
It feels very stressful. Sorry if you're listening, Christina, but did Christina not do accountancy? Was that not a thing, like in a previous life? Or was it that she studied to do accountancy? I can't remember now. But I feel like there was definitely some numbers-based stuff in there.
Yeah.
Melinda says that she did design, retail, and then worked as a breastfeeding counselor. Did not even know that was a thing, but that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then conservation. Amazing. Super cool. That's such a transition. I love it. Ellie used to be a flight attendant. Cool. Kathy used to be a librarian. Okay, we got librarians again. Librarians in the house. H used to work for Apple, but in an undisclosed capacity. Did not say in what way, but used to work for Apple.
The mega tech.
Again, we got tech people. Leslie used to be a life model. Is that when you get naked and get drawn? Is that
it's a way of training. Drawing as a very, very, very traditional method of learning to draw the human form. And it's not always naked, but it traditionally is.
Cool. Well, thank you for clarifying. And then later worked as a data analyst. Oh my God. Again, with the data. Chris used to be a historical interpreter at a heritage attraction in America somewhere. Cool.
Love it.
And someone else used to be a teacher. And those were all of the ones that I was going to say harvest, but those were all of the ones I could save. Because in the great outage of various Facebook-owned things, some of the replies got eaten. So
no,
if you didn't hear yours read out, it's because the great Facebook monster ate them all. We have lost a few replies. Sorry about that. But thank you for contributing them anyway. I did read them, but I didn't write them down, which means that I'm not going to trust my really unreliable memory. Those are super cool, different careers that people have come from. And some of them I'm just baffled by and I love. And others I'm like, I can see a natural transition there. So again, I'm really enjoying the sort of wild variety that we're finding here. Thank you, everyone who contributed something to that. That was amazing to hear about what you've done in previous lives. Super cool.
So I feel a bit guilty because my friend has not written in, and I don't know how well known this is as a previous career. So I'm just gonna say sorry, and if I've got the details wrong, I'm sorry. But I really want to say, pretty sure one of my friends used to be in something along the lines of bioscience or something like that, and was in the business of something to do with, well, it's to do with cattle breeding, I think, and something to do with bull semen.
Oh.
Right? I think. Something to do with test tubes and bull semen.
Amazing. I mean...
And then was like, I'm not doing this anymore, and decided to do conservation instead.
Amazing.
So I'm sorry to my friend, insert name here, if I've got that wrong and annoyed you. I'll buy you a beer to apologise.
And if it was wrong, please do write in and correct. Today I'm reviewing Managing Change in Museums and Galleries, a Practical Guide by Piotr Biankowski and Hilary McGowan. It's a 2021 Routledge publication, and I'm enjoying the digital version, probably for my sins. I picked up this book, albeit virtually, for a number of reasons. 1, conservators talk about managing change all the time. 2, the past year and a half has been a time of incredible change for me personally. 3, our sector, by which I mean conservation itself, is in dire need of change if we want to survive and thrive. And 4, we've been talking about changes throughout this whole episode, albeit career changes. Essentially, this is a book about leadership, which made me fret a little bit. It's not my standard fare, and I'm no longer embedded in a big organization, so I immediately felt a twang of imposter syndrome. Who might be reading a book aimed at leaders? But I suppose it might contain a thing or two that's useful even to ordinary mortals, so I shall press on for you, dear listener. The book is split into 6 parts, each with many little bite-sized chapters, so let's go through each one very briefly. The parts, not the chapters. Part 1 is called What is Change? And I like that it immediately grapples with what I think of when I hear the words organizational change. I think of redundancies, doing more with less time, and expecting part-time employees to do full-time jobs. I've seen it so many times, and it's hard not to have that knee-jerk reaction after a couple of years in the heritage sector, so I'm sort of grateful that we addressed the elephant in the room straight away. We also explore that change doesn't look the same in any two places, that most change takes time, and that the sort of short-term thinking that plagues the sector is actually sort of poisoning it. Each chapter contains a central nugget of information or some food for thought, often accompanied by a quote from a museum professional. Although not always. I saw at least one Bible quote slip in. Don't let that put you off. Part 2 is called Preparing for Change, and as you may expect, it's focused on figuring out the why as well as the how. My favourite takeaway from this section is the importance of a common purpose, a vision everyone shares, or at least knows exists. The chapter on modelling change made my head hurt and reminded me of why I'm not a grand strategist, but overall I like this part of the book. My favourite chapter in this section is called Expect Chaos, and I feel like that should be a motto, or maybe a tattoo. Part 3 is Leading Change, and looks at what makes a good leader for change, as well as a whole host of topics useful to people leading organisations big and small. My favourite is probably the chapter on embracing failure and admitting fault, a topic we've often brought up on the show as something really vital for conservatives to do more of. Not every story is one of success, and talking about that is both brave and necessary all at once. Part 4 is all about the role of staff and volunteers in making change happen. The chapter on fear of change resounded particularly well, as their behaviours I've seen both in colleagues and in myself on occasion. The chapter about countering resistance was a crash course in savvy soft skills, and one I recommend that everyone reads, regardless of whether or not you're a manager. Its insights will help you work with clients and colleagues alike. Other good chapters include a very psychological take on how to best support staff, how to improve morale, and the importance of acknowledging our emotions. Part 5 is entitled Why Change Fails, and deals with some of the common pitfalls, and ideally how to avoid them if you can. The final section of the book is about evaluating and learning from change. This is all a bit managey for my tastes, but I like the part about reflective practice, which is much more my style of taking stock after a project or event. I love the chapter on using external voices, as this isn't done nearly enough in a relatively closed-off industry, so if you read only one thing from this section, let that one be it. At the end you'll find some excellent resource lists and recommended reading if you're hungry for more. This book is, in its own words, aimed at practitioners, and not a how-to guide or toolkit. The short-form chapters with their headings put me more in mind of a self-help book, or the sort of book aimed to focus the mind by giving you a daily meditation. That's not the intent either, of course, but it has some of that flavour. I would say this book is more useful to managers and the people at the top, more than the people on the shop floor, as it were, even though Part 4 is trying to be a bit more about employees and volunteers. I think an introspective person who'd like to examine their own emotional responses to change would find it useful as a sort of troubleshooting guide, but it doesn't feel quite accessible enough to be for everyone in the sector. I like the central message that change is everybody's job, though, because it is. This publication is pleasantly free, at least largely, of case studies, and instead draws on the author's considerable experience in the sector, and it shows. Suitably anonymized or tastefully vague examples are trotted out when needed, but mostly you definitely get the vibe of elders sharing their wisdom. No offense to either author, I have no concept of your age, and I don't mean to suggest you're old, just that you're knowledgeable. The use of quotes is much more effective at conveying what a chapter is trying to do, and reminds me a little bit of Culture is Bad for You, which is another experience-based and well-researched book we reviewed a while back. Anyway, if it takes your fancy, this book has 210 pages and costs £29.99, British pounds by the way, from the publisher in paperback format. If you're enjoying the C Word and would like to support our work, then please consider becoming one of our patrons. For as little as $1 per month, you can help us keep our episodes online and more of them coming. Patreon helps us meet our regular costs for the show, and also to plan ahead so we know roughly how much of a monthly budget we've got. That's super helpful when you're trying to do something special like buy a better microphone or save up to go to a special event. Your support also helps keep us free of advertisement. In return, our supporters get access to our archive of extended episodes, which you can only access on our Patreon page. Yeah, for that $1 a month, you get a little extra audio enjoyment. We've crunched the numbers, and it's about 10% extra content on a regular basis. Well, that's not bad for less than a cup of coffee, eh? If supporting us sounds like something you'd like to do, then head over to patreon.com/thecword and join our bunch of absolute champions. Thanks for listening. We're The C Word, and you'll be listening to Erin Foster, Kloe Rumsey, and me, Jen Mathiasson. join us next time for an episode about Halloween. In the meantime, check out our website at thecword.show, tweet us at the C Word Podcast, or simply email us on thecwordpodcast@gmail.com. The intro and outro music is Spring by Deed Music, used under a Creative Commons Attribution License. Additional music by Callum Robertson. This has been a Wooden Dice production.
Great Kloe anecdote. I don't know any of the details. Let me just look them up.
Don't worry, breakdown. Don't worry. It's fine.
I can't even remember the name of the museum.